So after former President Obama claimed credit for our current economic boom yesterday, President Trump fired back, saying the boom is due to rolling back Obama's policies by cutting regulations and taxes. So who's right? Who cares? Think about it. The debate we're having isn't over how great things are. That ship has sailed. The media and the Dems see there's no more denying the success, so now it's about quibbling over credit. Fine, let the Dems have it. It won't win them election, but it might reduce their tears.
Barack Obama didn't just run a presidency, he curated a cinematic experience. With soaring speeches, slow pauses, and a jawline made for lighting filters, his 2 terms were wrapped in poetic branding that made even his critics whisper, well, he sounded good.
Asking you to believe, not in my ability to bring about change, but in yours. Yes, we can. Yes, we did. Yes, we can.
Oh, God.
Well, it was a moving speech, and the audience response equally moving. So if the Obama presidency were a film, this speech would be the climax. All that's missing is the horse, the sunset, the rousing closing music as the title card reads the end, perhaps in cursive.
But now the illusion is crumbling, and Greg Gutfeld is leading the demolition crew. In a takedown so sharp it could slice through marble, Gutfeld dismantles the Obama myth piece by piece, one polished line at a time. Gone are the days when, yes, we can, echoed like a hymn. Now it's more like the punchline to an inside joke, only the media still pretends to believe. Gutfeld doesn't need a campaign. He's armed with facts, a brutal sense of humor, and zero tolerance for the fantasy that charm equals competence. As Obama enjoys his post-presidency glow from Silicon Valley boardrooms and Netflix lounges, Gutfeld's asking what nobody in legacy newsrooms will. What exactly did Obama do that justified the non-stop applause? The speeches were moving, the branding was flawless. But under all that shine, was there actual substance? Or just a glossy rerun we all pretended was real progress?
Helping the party to tell them to return to the rhetoric that helped them lose in 2024, like the dictator kind of stuff. It doesn't work on half the country. It's not going to get any better.
I don't think they have answers. And is it me? He's looking banged up.
Yeah, he's been having
it's the first time. It's something I've never seen with him. He looks scared.
Yeah.
When Obama claimed credit for today's economic strength, it was like someone showing up to a wedding they weren't invited to, dressed in white. Almost instantly, Trump fired back, insisting it was his deregulation, tax cuts, and market confidence that fueled the boom.
Divorce rumors continue to escalate for the Obamas. Hopefully they can settle it like men.
But Greg Gutfeld isn't interested in that tug of war over credit. He's focused on the bigger fraud, how Obama's so-called recovery was a PR masterpiece with very little substance. While headlines celebrated growth, everyday Americans were stuck in wage stagnation, sky-high debt, and part-time gigs dressed up as success stories. Obama promised hope and change, but the only thing that changed was the language. Suddenly, limping along became historic recovery. Gutfeld mocks it all, the trillion-dollar stimulus that fizzled like a flat soda, the signs bragging about jobs created that cost more than the paychecks they advertised. And while the press fawned over spreadsheets and speeches, working families wondered why the so-called miracle felt like a mirage. If the Obama economy was a movie, it had a killer trailer, but no plot. Gutfeld isn't buying the applause. He's flipping through receipts and asking what many are thinking. Where was the real progress?
With somebody that you don't like and you try to lose them at the party. That's what Obama has done to Joe. He's lost them at the party and now he's moving on, and then he tweets, and then you find out that he's tweeting about something else while you're at the party. And it's just, I think it's kind of mean to Joe. The second thing is that it's part of that I told you mechanism that only happens when things are good. Because do you think Obama would take any responsibility if the good times were actually bad times?
If Obama had a crown jewel, it was healthcare, or at least that's how it was sold. The Affordable Care Act came wrapped in promises, lower costs, better coverage, and the golden line: If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. But for millions, that phrase aged worse than dial-up internet. Greg Gutfeld rips into it with glee, comparing the rollout to a tech nightmare designed by interns who never met a login screen. Deductibles skyrocketed, options vanished, and confusion reigned. For many Americans, the only thing that got more affordable was disappointment. Gutfeld calls it what it was, a branding exercise that hid a bureaucratic blunder. And yet, the media applauded like they were watching a Broadway debut.
President Obama took another stand against evil yesterday, lashing out at ISIS, pernicious gang crime and human rights abuses in left-wing dictatorships like Venezuela and Cuba. I was kidding. He went after Fox News again.
I think the effort to suggest that the poor are sponges, leeches, are...
Obama could have handed out IOUs and still been called a visionary. Meanwhile, average families were stuck paying more for less, crossing their fingers that a cold didn't become a financial crisis. Healthcare wasn't transformed, it was repackaged. And Gutfeld makes sure you remember that behind every moving speech was a silent waiting room full of people wondering where the magic went. The crown jewel? More like a crown of thorns with a copay. One of the most repeated talking points about Barack Obama's presidency is that it was scandal-free. But Greg Gutfeld isn't buying it. And he's not alone. According to him, calling Obama's administration scandal-free is like saying a magician never messed up because the audience kept clapping. From the IRS targeting controversy to the Benghazi disaster, the Fast and Furious gun-running operation to the shady surveillance of journalists, there were plenty of red flags. But the media treated them like awkward family secrets, buried in basements and forgotten behind the fridge. Gutfeld doesn't just question the narrative, he bulldozes it. Transparency? Obama campaigned on it, then let the NSA balloon into Big Brother's dream house. He promised accountability, then dodged every major fire with a press release and a photo op. And somehow, the press kept calling it elegance. While critics got labeled as cynical or racist for asking questions, Obama floated above the fray, cloaked in the kind of media immunity that would make a Kardashian jealous. Gutfeld's not scandal hunting. He's showing how the scandals were right there, in plain sight, disguised by lighting, language, and a nation too hypnotized to notice. Obama didn't govern, he performed. That's Gutfeld's point, and he's not subtle about it. Everything from speeches to scandals felt like carefully scripted acts in a high-budget political theater. Unity was the recurring theme, but division was the subtext. While the country argued over bathrooms and pronouns, Obama smiled for the cameras and let the chaos unfold. Gutfeld paints him not as a leader, but as a vibe curator, more focused on mood than outcome. He compares the former president to a guy who tosses a grenade into a dinner party and compliments the curtains on his way out. There's no denying Obama's words could lift a room, but what about his policies? Gutfeld argues they often fell flat, buried under performance and poetic phrasing. From political correctness to identity politics, Obama set the tone for a new kind of soft power, one that silenced dissent with hashtags and applause. And while social media exploded with slogans, the problems on the ground remained. According to Gutfeld, the stage was set, the lighting perfect, and the cast loyal, but behind the scenes, the machinery was broken. The audience may have cheered, but the show left the country more divided than ever. Barack Obama winning the Nobel Peace Prize was the political equivalent of giving someone a trophy for showing up. Except this trophy came with drone strikes. Greg Gutfeld doesn't let that irony slide. While the world applauded his global elegance, behind the curtain was a commander-in-chief with a kill list. The same man who campaigned on ending endless wars ended up authorizing drone attacks that often took out more wedding guests than terrorists. But the media brushed it off like it was just a scheduling error. Gutfeld skewers the absurdity of a peaceful president who expanded military action across the globe, calling it the ultimate branding trick. Sell calm, act aggressive, and smile while you do it. Even the hits that made headlines, Bin Laden, for instance, were treated as solo achievements, as if no one else had been trying. Meanwhile, human rights abuses in hostile regimes were met with silence or polite disapproval, unless the real enemy was Fox News. That's who Obama took repeated aim at. Gutfeld mocks the misplaced outrage, pointing out how easier it is to lecture American media than challenge actual dictators. Underneath the hope was a hard edge, dressed in diplomacy but sharpened with silence. If Obama had a real superpower, Gutfeld says, it wasn't leadership, it was media hypnosis. No president in modern history enjoyed such a relentless wave of praise for doing so little with so much. The press didn't just cover him, they canonized him. Every speech was historic, every misstep was nuanced. If he sneezed, MSNBC called it bold climate activism. Gutfeld's sarcasm cuts deep, likening the mainstream press to a public relations firm that never charged a dime. Every question was a softball, every scandal downplayed, every opponent painted as a crank. In this carefully staged production, Obama didn't need a press secretary. He had an entire industry holding his mirror. When wages stagnated and unemployment lingered, the headlines focused on tone and tenacity. When foreign policy flopped, it was reframed as strategic patience. Gutfeld calls it the golden age of journalistic bootlicking, where facts were second to vibes and style always trumped substance. It wasn't coverage, it was worship. And in a world where hashtags counted more than results, Obama's performance was always rated 5 stars, even when the house was burning behind him. Obama promised change, but sometimes all that changed was the logo. Gutfeld doesn't just call it underwhelming, he calls it betrayal dressed in branding. Take education, for example. Billions poured into bureaucracies with no measurable impact. Inner city schools didn't improve, they got new slogans and 5-year plans that went nowhere. Gutfeld calls it academic trickle-down. Give money to the unions, cross your fingers, and hope students can read before their 30s. On guns, Obama preached restriction while standing behind more armed guards than a Marvel villain. Gutfeld rolls his eyes. It's not a gun problem for him, it's a you have a gun problem. Then there's immigration. Despite his compassionate image, Obama deported more people than any president before him. Yes, those same infamous cages at the border. Built under his administration, just with better lighting and softer background music. And don't forget Wall Street. The man who promised to hold big banks accountable ended up handing them the keys to the kingdom. Gutfeld says it was like hiring a fox to guard the henhouse, then pretending not to notice the feathers everywhere. Behind the slogans and soft-focus speeches, the reality was cold, calculated, and quietly cruel. Obama didn't retire, he rebranded. Gutfeld jokes that he left office and stepped straight into his next role, America's most overpaid narrator. Now he floats above the chaos, sipping wine in Silicon Valley and dropping in with polished commentary whenever the media needs a hit of nostalgia. With his cardigan and that ever-present smirk, he's ready to replace Morgan Freeman if the moment calls. Meanwhile, the legacy he left behind crumbles like a dry erase board, executive orders reversed with the stroke of a pen, while he feigns surprise. Gutfeld says you could hear the whimper from Martha's Vineyard when Trump bulldozed it all like cardboard scenery. Obama's policies weren't built to last, they were built to look good. As long as the speech had rhythm and the lighting was soft, the audience cheered. But governing, that was outsourced to committees, interns, and vibes. Gutfeld sees the post-Obama glow as the ultimate trick, stay just visible enough to be remembered fondly, but far enough removed that no one asks hard questions. He's not leading anymore, he's narrating, a version of the past that makes even the messiest chapters look like they were part of the plan. Obama didn't drain the swamp, he installed a merch table in it. Gutfeld paints the final picture, not of a failed president, but a master of performance who sold America on curated hope and left behind a nation tangled in hashtags and identity politics. From tech censorship to cultural tantrums, Greg sees today's climate where disagreement is a hate crime and moral lectures come from beachside mansions as Obama's greatest export. He didn't build a better system, he built a vibe that excused its flaws. Underneath the poetic pauses and crafted Instagram-worthy moments was a president who governed like a college group project, outsourced, late, and somehow still praised for effort. Gutfeld doesn't just criticize Obama's actions, he exposes how the media turned failures into features, how polished branding replaced accountability, and how America traded tough questions for soft lighting. In the end, Obama didn't transform the country, he transformed the conversation. Substance took a backseat to sentiment, and speeches became substitutes for solutions. But as the smoke clears and the applause finally fades, one question lingers in the silence. Was it ever real, or was it just really well marketed?